You ever meet someone that the world completely overlooks? Not because they're invisible, but because they're quiet, simple, unassuming. This is one of those stories, and trust me, by the end of it, you'll never look at ordinary the same way again. Daniel Carter wasn't rich. He didn't drive a luxury car. He didn't wear designer clothes, and he definitely wasn't the kind of man people turned their heads for when he walked into a room. But if you looked a little closer, you'd see something rare, something powerful, something most people spend their entire lives chasing. Dignity. Kind you can't buy. The kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that quietly says, I know who I am. Daniel was a single dad, and to him, that was everything. Every morning started the same way. The soft sound of an alarm clock, a tired sigh, and then purpose kicking in. He'd step into the small kitchen of his modest apartment, still half asleep, flipping pancakes while checking the time, because in just a few minutes, a little tornado would come running in. Dad, I can't find my shoes. That was Lily. 8 years old, bright, energetic, and the absolute center of Daniel's universe. Life wasn't easy. Money was tight. Sometimes bills stacked up faster than he could pay them. But Lily, she never felt it, because Daniel made sure of one thing no matter how hard life got. Home always felt safe, warm, full of love. Mornings were chaotic, messy. Ponytails that never came out quite right. Lunchboxes packed with even if they weren't. Fancy. And rushed goodbyes at the door. Have a great day, sweetheart. You too, Dad. Evenings were quieter. Homework spread across the table. Daniel trying his best to explain math problems. He barely understood himself. Okay. So if this is X, then... Lily giggled. You're doing it wrong, Dad. He'd smile. Yeah. Then you teach me. And then came the best part of the day. Bedtime. A story. A moment of peace. A chance to slow down, because no matter how exhausted he was, Daniel never skipped it. Not once. To the outside world, it didn't look like much. A small apartment, a simple life, no luxury, no status, no spotlight. But to Lily, it was everything. And to Daniel, it was enough, until one day, everything changed. It started with a simple letter, folded neatly, handed to Lily. At school, she burst through the front door that afternoon, eyes shining brighter than usual. Dad, guess what? Daniel looked up from the kitchen. What's going on? She held out the paper like it was treasure. They're having a parents' gala night. Daniel paused. What? A gala? She said excitedly. At school. All the parents are coming. He took the paper, read it carefully, and with every word, his expression shifted. An exclusive evening for families. Networking. Formal attire required. High-profile guests. Business leaders. Investors. Celebrities. This wasn't just a school event. This was a status event. The kind of place where people like Daniel didn't belong to. Folded the paper slowly. Tried to keep his voice calm. Sounds fancy it is. Lily beamed. Everyone's parents are going. There was a pause. A quiet moment. And then she looked up at him. Eyes full of hope. Will you come? That question. It hit harder than anything else, because Daniel knew what she was really asking. Will you stand beside me? Even if you feel out of place. He hesitated. Just for a second, because reality crept in. He only owned one suit. Worn. Barely fitting the kind of room this event would be held in. But then he looked at Lily. Really. Looked at her. And saw the excitement. The pride. The love. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. He smiled. Of course I'll come. The night of the gala arrived, and Daniel stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, smoothing out wrinkles that wouldn't go away, taking a quiet breath. He didn't look rich, he didn't look powerful, but he stood tall, because he wasn't going there to impress anyone. He was going for Lily. When they arrived, it was exactly what he expected, and worse. The building itself looked like something out of a movie. Massive chandeliers glowing. Overhead marble floors reflecting every step. People dressed in elegance and confidence. Daniel felt it instantly. The difference. Conversations paused, eyes shifted, judgment Subtle, but sharp. Is he alone? Where's his wife? Does he even belong here? The whispers weren't loud, but they didn't need to be, because Daniel heard them. Anyway, every word. And for a brief moment. Just a moment. It stung. But then a small hand slipped into his. Lily, looking up at him, smiling, and just like that, everything else faded. He straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, and walked forward, not fast, not hesitant, confident, because dignity, it doesn't come from what you wear, it comes from how you carry yourself, and Daniel carried himself like a man who knew his worth, even if no one else did. That's when it happened. Outside, a sleek black car pulled up. Silent, powerful, kind of presence that didn't need noise to be noticed. The doors opened, and everything changed. The energy in the room shifted. Instantly, conversations stopped. Heads turned. Eyes widened because everyone knew who'd just arrived. She stepped out. Slow, graceful, unapologetic ally, powerful Clara Voss, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in Europe, a woman who built an empire from nothing, a name that carried weight in every room she entered. Tall, elegant, confident, every step she took commanded attention. And just like that, every eye in the building was on her. But Clara, she wasn't looking at them. She wasn't interested in the admiration, or the attention, or the whispers. Instead, her gaze moved across the room, scanning, searching, until it stopped on him. Daniel Carter, standing quietly, holding his daughter's hand, unaffected by the noise, unimpressed by the status. For a moment, time slowed, because in a room full of people trying to be seen, he was the only one not trying at all, and that caught her attention. Clara's expression softened, just slightly, almost unnoticeable to anyone else, but then she smiled. Not the kind of smile you give for cameras, not the kind you fake in social settings, a real smile, and it was directed at him, the man everyone else underestimated, and in that quiet, powerful, unexpected moment, something began, something no one in that room saw coming. And trust me, this was only the beginning. Have you ever seen a moment so unexpected that it completely shifts the energy of an entire room? Because what happened next, no one saw coming. Clara Voss didn't follow crowds. She didn't chase attention, and she definitely didn't waste time on people who tried hard to impress her. She had spent years surrounded by power, by influence. By people who measured worth in numbers, titles, and status. After a while, it all started to look the same, predictable, empty. But tonight, something felt different. Standing at the entrance of that grand ballroom, Clara could feel it. The eyes on her, the silent admiration, the quiet competition. Everyone hoping, just hoping she would notice them. A handshake, a smile, a moment. But Clara didn't move toward them. She didn't even acknowledge them, because across the room, she had already noticed someone else, a man who wasn't trying, wasn't performing, wasn't chasing attention. Daniel Carter. He stood there calmly, holding his daughter's hand, speaking softly to her as if the rest of the world didn't exist. No forced smile, no nervous energy, no desperation to fit in, and somehow, that made him stand out more than anyone else in that room. Clara tilted her head slightly, curious, interested. Who is he? Someone whispered nearby. I have no idea, another replied. Probably not important. Clara's lips curved just a little. Not important. That was about to change. Without hesitation, she started walking. Every step she took echoed through the room, not because it was loud, but because of what it meant. People noticed. Of course they did. They always did. But this time, something was different. Because Clara wasn't walking toward the most powerful man in the room, or the richest, or the most connected. She was walking toward Daniel. The whispers started immediately. Wait. Where is she going? Is she seriously walking toward him? No way. Daniel didn't notice at first. He was too busy listening to Lily. Dad, look. They have a chocolate fountain. He smiled softly. Yeah. That might be the best part of this whole thing. And then a voice.com.confident. Right beside him. Mind if I join you? Daniel turned Anne for the first time. He saw her up close. Clara Voss, standing right there, looking at him. For a split second, the world around him seemed to fade. Not because of who she was, but because of how she carried herself. There was no arrogance, no superiority, just presence. Daniel blinked once, then smiled politely, of course. Simple, natural, no overthinking, and just like that. The most unexpected conversation in the room began. They didn't talk about money, or business, or success. They talked about life. Clara glanced down at Lily. And who do we have here? Lily stood a little straighter. I'm Lily. Clara smiled warmly. Well, Lily, you have excellent taste in company. Daniel chuckled softly. I like to think so. There was something refreshing about him. Clara could feel it instantly. So, she said, looking back at Daniel. Are you enjoying the gala? Daniel glanced around the room, then back at her. It's impressive. She raised an eyebrow slightly. That doesn't sound convincing. He smiled. I've seen tougher rooms. Clara tilted her head. Oh really? Daniel nodded. Try explaining math homework to an 8-year-old after a long day. There was a pause, and then Clara laughed. Not a polite laugh, not a controlled one, a real one. And just like that, something shifted, because people noticed. They always noticed when Clara Voss laughed like that across the room. Heads turned again, but this time, the attention wasn't just on her, it was on him. Who is that guy? How is he making her laugh? This doesn't make any sense. But Daniel, he didn't care. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't trying to win anything. He was just being himself. And that's exactly what made him different. Clara leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice just enough to make the moment feel personal. You don't seem nervous. Daniel shrugged. Should I be? She smiled. Most people are. He looked at her for a second. Steady. I've learned something, he said. People are just people. Titles don't change that. That answer, it caught her off guard, because it was honest, simple, and rare. For a moment, Clara didn't say anything. She just looked at him, studying him, trying to understand what made him so different. And then Lily tugged gently on Clara's hand. Do you like ice cream? Clara blinked, surprised. Then smiled. I love ice cream. Lily grinned. Then you're my favorite person already. Daniel laughed softly. Careful. You just met her. Clara crouched down slightly, meeting Lily at eye level. Well, I'm honored, she said warmly. And in that moment, something clicked. Not business, not attraction, connection, real, unfiltered, human. Clara stood up again, looking at Daniel, and without overthinking it, without analyzing it, without questioning it, she made a decision. Would you like to join me for dinner tomorrow? Silence. The kind of silence that spreads fast because people heard. Of course they did. And when they did, the entire room froze. Did she just invite him? No way. This has to be a joke. But it wasn't. Clara wasn't joking. She stood there, confident, waiting. Daniel paused. Not because he was intimidated, not because he didn't know what to say, but because moments like this, they matter. He glanced at Lily, who was already smiling like she knew the answer. Then back at Clara, and simply said, sure. No hesitation, no performance, just honesty, and just like that, everything changed, because sometimes the biggest moments in life don't come with noise, they come quietly, unexpectedly in the middle of a crowded room, where two completely different worlds collide. And in that moment, no one could have predicted what was about to happen next, but one thing was certain. This wasn't just a conversation, it was the beginning of something bigger, something real, something that would challenge everything people thought they knew. About status, about connection, about love, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Sometimes, life doesn't change slowly. It doesn't give you warnings. It doesn't ask if you're ready. Sometimes, it shifts in a single moment, a single yes. And for Daniel Carter, that moment had already happened. The next evening arrived faster than expected. Daniel stood in Front of his mirror again, same suit, same quiet. Apartment. Same man, but something felt different. Not because of where he was going, but because of who he was going to meet. Clara Voss, a name that carried power. Influence. A world Daniel had never been part of. He adjusted his collar slightly, took a breath, and for a brief moment, doubt crept in. What am I doing? But then he thought of Lily, her excitement, her belief in him, and just like that, the doubt faded, because Daniel wasn't trying to become someone else. He was just showing up, and sometimes that's enough. The car that arrived for him wasn't ordinary, sleek, black, silent, the kind of car that didn't just transport you. It announced you. Daniel stepped inside. The door closed softly behind him, and as the city lights passed by the window, he realized something. This wasn't just dinner. This was a doorway to a world he had never imagined stepping into. When the car finally stopped, Daniel looked up. And for a moment, he didn't move, because standing in front of him was one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Glass walls glowing with warm golden light. Luxury cars lined up outside. People dressed in elegance, stepping in and out like it was normal. But for Daniel, this wasn't normal. This was a different universe. He stepped out of the car, took a breath, and walked. Inside, every detail was perfect. Crystal chandeliers hanging like stars, marble floors reflecting. Every step soft music floating through the air. And then he saw her. Clara sitting at a table near the window, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. She looked breathtaking. Not just because of the elegant dress. Or the way the light reflected off her hair, but because of the way she carried herself. Confident, effortless. She noticed him, smiled, and stood up. You made it. Daniel smiled back. I said I would. Simple. Natural. No pressure. No performance. And somehow, that made everything feel easier. They sat down. A waiter approached instantly. Menus placed carefully in front of them. Daniel glanced at it briefly, then smiled. I'll let you choose. Clara raised an eyebrow. Trusting me already? He leaned back slightly. You seem like someone who knows what she's doing. She smirked. Most of the time. And just like that, the tension dissolved, because this didn't feel like a business dinner. It didn't feel like two people from completely different worlds. It felt normal. Tonight, Clara said, closing the menu, no business talk. Daniel nodded. Good. I wouldn't have much to contribute anyway. She looked at him, studying him again. You'd be surprised. The food arrived simple. Elegant. Perfectly prepared. But neither of them focused on it much, because the conversation, that's where the real connection was. They talked about childhood. Gara, growing up with nothing, building everything from the ground up. Fighting for every opportunity. Daniel listened carefully, not impressed by the success, but by the journey. Then she asked about him, and Daniel. He didn't hold back. He talked about Lily, about learning things he never thought he'd need to know. Cooking. Cleaning. Fixing broken things around the house. Google has saved my life more times than I can count, he joked. Clara laughed again, that same real laugh. And for a moment, she forgot who she was supposed to be. You make it sound easy, she said. Daniel shook his head. It's not. There was a pause, but it's worth it. That answer stayed with her, because in her world, people didn't talk like that. They talked about gains, losses, power, strategy. Not about what was worth it. Clara leaned slightly forward, her voice softer now. Do you know what's strange? Daniel looked at her. I've met presidents, CEOs, people who run entire industries. She paused, and yet, this is one of the most honest conversations I've had in years. Daniel didn't react dramatically, he just smiled. Maybe you've been talking to the wrong people. That hit deeper than expected, because she knew he was right. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the restaurant faded into the background, and in that quiet space, something shifted. Not attraction, not curiosity, connection. Real unforced. Clara exhaled slowly. Most people talk to my money, she admitted. Daniel nodded. Then they're missing out. She looked at him. Really looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not for what she had, but for who she was. Dinner came to an end, but neither of them rushed to leave, because moments like this, you don't rush them, you let them breathe. Finally, Clara stood. Come with me, she said. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. Should I be worried? She smiled. Not unless you're afraid of new experiences. He stood up. I think I'll take my chances. They walked outside together. The night air was cool, the city lights glowing around them, and then Daniel saw it. A private jet. Waiting. He stopped. Okay. Now, I'm a little worried. Clara laughed softly. Relax. I'm not kidnapping you. He crossed his arms playfully. That's exactly what someone planning a kidnapping would say. She shook her head, still smiling. Have you ever been to Switzerland? Daniel blinked. No. She tilted her head slightly. Do you trust me? That question. It wasn't light. It meant something. Daniel thought for a second. Then he nodded. Double quotes. Yeah, I do. Clara smiled. Good. She looked at him. Pack your bags. He frowned slightly. For what? Her answer was simple. You and Lily are coming with me. Silence. Because moments like this, they don't feel real. They feel like something out of a dream. Daniel let out a small breath. You're serious? Clara didn't hesitate. Completely. And in that moment, standing under the city lights, looking at a life he had never imagined, Daniel realized something. This wasn't just an opportunity. This was a turning point. A chance, not to become someone else. But to experience something more. He smiled. I guess Lily's going to like this. Clara smiled back. I have a feeling she will. And just like that, the door opened out to a world of luxury. Adventure, and something neither of them fully understood yet. But one thing was certain. This journey, it was just getting started. If you're enjoying this story, make sure you drop a comment below. Would you say yes to this opportunity? And don't forget to subscribe. Some places don't feel real, not because they don't exist, but because they feel like something your mind created on its best day. Switzerland was one of those places as the private jet descended through the clouds. Lily pressed her face against the window, her eyes wide with wonder. Dad. Look. Daniel leaned slightly closer. And for a moment, even he forgot how to breathe. Mountains stretched endlessly across the horizon, sharp peaks cutting through soft clouds. Golden sunlight reflecting off icy slopes like diamonds. It didn't look like a country, it looked like a painting. Is this real? Lily whispered. Daniel smiled softly. I think it is. But deep down, even he wasn't completely sure. Because this wasn't their world. Or at least, it never used to be. When the jet landed, everything moved smoothly. Effortlessly. A luxury car was already waiting. The doors opened, and just like that, they stepped into another level of life. The drive to the villa was quiet, peaceful. Lily couldn't stop looking out the window. Every turn revealed something new. Frozen lakes, wooden chalets, snow-covered trees that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. And Daniel, he watched her because seeing her this happy, that was the real luxury. When they finally arrived, the car slowed to a stop, and for a moment, no one moved, because standing in front of them was something beyond imagination. A private luxury villa, glass walls, warm, golden lights glowing from inside, a perfect view of the Alps stretching endlessly into the distance. Welcome, Clara said softly. Lily stepped out first, spinning slowly, taking it all in. Dad, we live here now. Daniel laughed quietly. Not exactly, but even he couldn't deny it. It felt like a dream you wouldn't want to wake up from. Inside, everything was perfect. Soft carpets. Modern design. Fireplaces glowing warmly. A quiet elegance that didn't scream wealth but whispered it. Lily ran from room to room. This one is mine. No, this one. Wait, this one has a better view. Clara smiled, watching her. I think she likes it. Daniel nodded. Yeah. I think she does. But then, his smile faded slightly, because for a brief moment, that familiar feeling returned. The feeling of not belonging, of standing in a world that wasn't built for you. Clara noticed. Of course she did. She always did. You okay? She asked gently. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Just taking it all in. She stepped a little closer, lowered her voice. You don't have to feel out of place here. He looked at her. That's easy for you to say. She shook her head. No. It's not. There was something in her tone, something real. Do you know how many rooms I've walked into where I didn't belong? She said quietly. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. You. She smiled faintly. More than you think. That surprised him, because from the outside, she looked like she belonged everywhere, but maybe that wasn't the full story. Difference is, she continued, I stopped caring. Daniel let out a small breath. Working on that, she smiled. You're doing better than you think. And just like that, the weight lifted, because sometimes, all it takes is one person reminding you of your worth. The next few days felt unreal. Mornings started with breathtaking views, hot chocolate in hand, soft sunlight reflecting off endless snow. Lily woke up excited every single day. Can we go outside? And of course, they did. Snowball fights, laughter echoing through the mountains, falling, slipping, laughing again. Clara joined in, without hesitation. No guards, no distance, no walls, just her dot. At one point, Lily pulled her toward a pile of snow. We're building a snowman. Clara laughed. I haven't done that in years. Then you're doing it now, Lily declared. And just like that, the billionaire was building a snowman. Daniel stood back for a moment, watching them, and something inside him shifted, because this wasn't about money. This wasn't about luxury. This was about moments, real ones, the kind you remember forever. Later that afternoon, Clara had another plan. Let's go into the city, she said. And just like that, they found themselves in Zurich. Luxury stores lined the streets. Designer brands glowing behind glass windows. People dressed like they belonged in magazines. Lily's eyes lit up again. Can we go inside? Clara smiled. Of course. Inside, everything sparkled. Elegant dresses, perfect lighting, soft music playing in the background. Lily twirled in front of a mirror wearing a beautiful dress. Dad, look. Daniel smiled. You look amazing. But as he stood there, watching everything around him, that feeling returned. Stronger this time. Because here, more than anywhere else, he felt the difference. His clothes, his background, his life. It didn't match this world. Clara saw it again. She walked up to him slowly, without saying a word. She adjusted his jacket slightly, smoothed the collar, then looked him in the eyes. You belong here. Daniel shook his head. Slightly. Not really. She didn't back down. Not because of money, she said softly. A pause. But because of who you are. That hit deeper than anything else, because no one had ever said that to him before. Not like that, and for the first time, he started to believe it. That evening, they returned to the villa. The fireplace was already lit, the room glowing with warm orange light. Lily fell asleep quickly, curled up peacefully between them, and for a moment, everything was still. Quiet. Calm. Perfect. Clara looked at Daniel. You're different, she said. Softly, he smiled slightly. So are you. She exhaled slowly. Most people don't see me. Daniel looked at her. I do. No hesitation, no doubt. Just truth. And in that moment, something changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. Because for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone. Not in a crowded room, not in a world full of noise, but right here, in the quiet, with each other. And sometimes, that's where the real magic happens. The most important moments in life don't come with noise, no grand music, no dramatic entrance, just silence, a quiet space, where truth finally speaks. And for Daniel and Clara, that moment was waiting. Days in Switzerland had started to blur together, not because they were forgettable, but because they were perfect. too perfect. Mornings filled with laughter, afternoons lost in snow-covered adventures, evenings wrapped in warmth beside the fire. It felt like a world outside of reality, but deep down, both of them knew something. This couldn't stay like this forever, because real life was still waiting, and eventually, they would have to face it. That evening, the sky looked different. The sun was setting slower, painting the mountains in shades of gold, orange, and soft pink. The kind of view that makes you stop and just breathe. Clara stood on the balcony, looking out at the endless Alps. Silent. Still. Daniel stepped outside a moment later, closing the glass door gently behind him. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke, because some moments don't need words right away. You ever feel like this isn't real? Clara finally asked. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the wind. Daniel leaned against the railing, looking out at the same view. Yeah, he admitted, a small pause. But I don't think that's a bad thing. She glanced at him. No. He shook his head slightly. Sometimes you need something unreal to remind you what real should feel like. That answer stayed in the air, because it meant more than it sounded. Clara turned back toward the mountains. I built everything from nothing, she said. Quietly. Daniel listened. He always did. No shortcuts. No safety net. Just work, sacrifice, focus. Her voice didn't sound proud. It sounded heavy, and somewhere along the way, she continued, I lost the simple parts of life. Daniel didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it. He just stood there, present. I forgot what it felt like to laugh without thinking, she said, to talk without an agenda, to just be. A long pause followed. Then she looked at him. You brought that back. Daniel shook his head. Gently, no. He met her eyes. You just needed the right people around you. That hit differently, because deep down, she knew it was true. But no one had ever said it like that before. No one had ever seen her beyond the success, the power, the image. Clara took a small step closer. And are you those people? She asked softly. That question. It wasn't simple. It carried weight, meaning possibility. Daniel looked at her. Then for just a second, he glanced inside at Lily, sleeping peacefully, safe, happy. And in that moment, everything became clear. He turned back to Clara. Yes. No hesitation, no overthinking, just truth. And somehow, that made it more powerful than anything else. Clara exhaled slowly, because something inside her shifted. Not as Clara Voss the billionaire, but as Clara. Just Clara. She stepped even closer now, close enough to feel the warmth between them. Stay, she whispered. The word was soft, but it carried everything. Not just for tonight, not just for this trip, for real, for something deeper, for something that didn't have an expiration date. Daniel didn't answer right away. Not because he didn't know what he felt, but because he understood something important. Moments like this, they deserve honesty, not impulse. He looked at her. Really looked at her. Not the woman the world admired, not the name people respected, but the person standing in front of him. Vulnerable. Real. And for the first time, a little unsure. Daniel reached out slowly, took her hand. Warm. Soft. Real. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Simple. Clear. But filled with meaning. Clara's eyes softened, because that wasn't just an answer. It was a promise. And for someone who had spent her life surrounded by uncertainty, that meant everything. The wind moved gently around them, the sky fading into deep shades of blue. Stars beginning to appear above the mountains, and in that quiet moment, something real began. Not built on status, not driven by attraction alone, but grounded in something stronger. Understanding. Respect. Connection. They stood there for a while, not speaking, not needing to, because sometimes silence says more than words ever could. Inside, Lily shifted slightly in her sleep, a small reminder of what truly mattered, of what this all meant. Because this wasn't just about two people finding each other. It was about building something that could last, something stable, something real. Later that night, they sat by the fireplace again. The same warm glow, the same quiet comfort. But everything felt different now. More certain, more grounded. Clara leaned back slightly. "You know this won't be easy," she said. Daniel nodded. "I know. Different worlds, different expectations, different realities waiting for them outside this place. But for once, that didn't feel like a problem. It felt like a challenge, and maybe, just maybe, one worth taking, because the strongest connections aren't the easiest ones. They're the ones you choose every day." And that night, without saying it out loud, they both made that choice. Reality, it always comes back, no matter how perfect a moment feels. No matter how far you travel. No matter how deeply you wish things could stay the same. Life waits. And eventually, you have to return. For Daniel, that moment had arrived. The private jet touched down softly, the same way it had taken off days ago. But this time, everything was different. Because the man stepping off that plane wasn't the same man who had boarded it. Not on the outside. He still wore simple clothes, still carried himself the same way, still held Lily's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. But inside, something had shifted. Confidence, clarity, a quiet understanding of his own worth. And beside him walked Clara Voss. Not ahead of him, not behind him, beside him, equal. And that changed everything. The drive back felt familiar. The city lights, the streets, the life he had always known. But now, it looked different, not smaller, not less important, just clearer. Because Daniel had seen something else, experienced something more, and instead of losing himself in it, he brought something back, perspective. When they reached home, Lily ran inside first. "I missed my room," she shouted. Daniel smiled. Because no matter how beautiful the world was, home still mattered. Clara stepped inside, slowly looking around, taking it all in. The small apartment, the simple furniture, the quiet warmth. And then she smiled. "It's perfect." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Most people wouldn't say that." She looked at him. "I'm not most people." And for the first time, that didn't feel like a difference. It felt like alignment. The next day, things moved fast. News travels quickly when powerful people are involved. And Clara Voss, she wasn't just powerful, she was watched, followed, talked about. So when she was seen returning with Daniel, with Lily, people noticed. At first, it was whispers, then headlines, photos, speculation, questions, double quotes, the billionaire and the single dad. The story spread faster than anyone expected, and with it came attention. The same people who once ignored Daniel now couldn't stop talking about him. But the real moment, it came a few days later, back at the same place where it all began. The school. Another event. Another gathering of the same elite crowd. The same whispers, the same people. But this time, something was different. Because this time, they were waiting to see if the rumors were true, waiting to see if he would show up again. And then, he did. Daniel walked in, same calm expression, same steady presence, Lily holding his hand. But this time, he wasn't alone. Clara walked beside him, elegant, confident, unshaken, and just like that, the room went silent. No whispers, no judgment, just silence, because everything they thought they knew had just been proven wrong. The man they underestimated was standing beside one of the most powerful women in the world. But here's the truth. It wasn't about status. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about something deeper. Presence, respect, connection, someone in the crowd finally spoke, unable to hold back the curiosity. How did this even happen? The question hung in the air, because everyone wanted the answer. Everyone needed to understand. Clara didn't hesitate. She stepped forward slightly, composed, and said, "He showed up." That was it. No long explanation, no dramatic story, just truth. Because in a world where people hesitate, where they hold back, Daniel did something simple, He showed up, for his daughter, for himself, for a moment that mattered, and that changed everything. Daniel didn't say anything. He didn't need to, because his presence said it all. The confidence, the calm, at the quiet strength. It wasn't new, it had always been there. People just hadn't seen it before, or maybe they hadn't wanted to. Lily smiled up at him. Dad. They're all staring again. Daniel chuckled softly. Let them. Clara glanced at him, a small smile forming, because she understood something now. This wasn't about changing him, it was about recognizing him for who he already was. Over the next few weeks, the attention didn't fade. Interviews, articles, speculation. People tried to turn their story into something else, a fairy tale, a strategy, a coincidence. But the truth, it was simpler than all of that. They weren't a headline, they were a partnership. Daniel didn't become someone else. He didn't change who he was to fit into Clara's world. And Clara, she didn't lose herself either. She didn't shrink her success, didn't hide her power. Instead, they met in the middle. Where real connection lives, where respect matters more than status, where presence matters more than appearance. And every night, no matter how busy life became, no matter how many eyes were watching, it all came back to the same thing. A quiet room, a simple moment. Daniel sitting beside Lily, reading her a bedtime story. Clara, nearby, watching, smiling. Not because of the life they built, but because of the way they built it together. And Lily, she believed something now, something simple, something powerful, that miracles don't always come with magic. Sometimes they come with a person, a moment, and the courage to show up.